So this meeting is being recorded for the April 1st ESSA Steering Committee. So welcome everyone, and Ms. Newton, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Wednesday, April 1st meeting of the ESSA Steering Committee to order. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and then plus I want to take for a few minutes and thank all of the educators for the hard work that y'all been doing the last few weeks, because I know it's been overwhelming, but there's nothing like asking an educator and a teacher to step up and do something and get a job done, and you have done excellent, and thank you at the department for your hard work and getting everything done. I know it's been very stressful time, but it's very much appreciated what you've been doing for all the students. So our first order of business is to
this is where students are learning.
Does anyone have a question or something that you'd like to comment on the minutes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Okay, I'm not sure who the second was.
Joyce Flowers, I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's great. All right. Our first order of business is Perkins 5, Dr. Creamer's.
Kramers, you need to unmute.
Thank you, and I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see the presentation okay? Great, okay. Well, we're just excited to share an update on where things are with the Perkins 5 state plan. We did have a little change in the path with all of the COVID-19. We've been in close contact with OCTAE. Again, OCTAE is the Office of Career Technical and Adult Education at the U.S. Department of Education. In close contact with them on the due date, and the original due date was April 15th. And so we will have an extension through June 15th to submit the state plan, which is great. That allows us additional time to have state board approval and time with the governor's office and a few other briefings and answering questions. Just kind of that last availability of time to do it right when everybody doesn't have as many distractions with COVID-19 as we kind of go into the final stretch. So since we last updated the ESSA Steering Committee, here's a couple things that we've been doing since then. We worked with OIE to complete the data modeling for our baselines and meaningful progress. We presented at the TAC committee, and they are very supportive of our rationale and our modeling. We made a few changes based on their recommendations, primarily graduation rate and non-traditional. Once we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but those two items were already performing at either a high rate or a very slow change rate. So we appreciated their feedback and comments on those two items especially. We have our public comment period still open on our state determined performance measures, and that is available through the DCTE website under the Perkins tab. And so public comment is still being accepted on that, and that really gets into the numerator and the denominator of each of our state determined performance levels. We have completed, it's in a final draft and comments for an executive summary of the state plan and a guide to the plan. And those documents will help provide more of an overview, key definitions. Instead of, if you read the whole plan and you still have questions, it's kind of a summary view for the reader. And so hopefully that will make it more consumer friendly for all audiences to be able to understand the key points and key buckets of the Perkins 5 state plan. We have the draft letter for the governor ready, but we do need time where he is available to divert attention. So that's ready to go for his review at the time where he is available to focus on that. We were hoping to bring the state plan before the State Board of Education for April, and it's not on the agenda, so I assume that's rolling then to the May, since we did get an extension through June. So we look forward to presenting that for consideration for approval for the State Board. And then again, mentioning the extension of the due date through now June 15th. And they have said that if you submit June 15th, that the original implementation date would still be good, that they would try on their end the best they could to have the approvals back by July 1, so implementation is not impacted. And that's good news. That's good news that the extra 2 months will not cause a delay in implementing Perkins 5. So any questions on any of those updates before I show just a little bit on some of the data pieces? Okay. One of the things that we are excited about is when we look at the data modeling for concentrators and non-concentrators. And the definition again of a concentrator are CTE participants who have completed 2 courses in a program of study. So it's 2 courses out of the 3 full courses in a sequence of courses that are in a single program of study trying to learn a particular skill set or knowledge set. So for example, mobile app development. So they're taking the first 2 courses of the 3 that would define them as a concentrator. So we've looked at some of the data modeling for academic performance, and what we're seeing, it's pretty exciting, is that the students in CTE who are concentrators, their graduation rate is at 96.9%, which is well above the state average for graduation rates. And we've known this you know, through some of the data we've done through the years, that students that are engaged in CTE do graduate at a higher rate because they're more engaged at times. It helps capture those students who may have otherwise fallen through the gaps. And so it's connecting with students, and the graduation rate is high. So this is one of those pieces where the TAC committee said, because it is so high, we have to be careful on how we set the baseline and meaningful progress, that we don't make it so high that we have schools that then can't achieve. And all schools would be accountable where we set our baselines. So we've been very cautious on that. But the great news is the number of concentrator, that percent graduation rate, how exciting that is. So a non-concentrator, that defines students who maybe they're a CTE participant, but they have not met the level of being a concentrator yet. And then for the 5-year adjusted cohort rate, you can see as well, when they even have additional time, that the graduation rate goes up even higher at the 97.5%. Looking at the percent tested, we know that that's extremely important for the number of students being tested. So you want to have at least 95% of students tested in each of the areas. So ELA, math, and science. You can see with concentrators that the testing rate really is a high testing rate. So 99.4% for ELA tested, for math 99.5% tested, and for science 99.7% tested. So in the instance of capturing the data for concentrators, we really have you know, nearly, not quite, but nearly the majority of students, of all students, being able to be tested and captured for data. And really that lets us know where all of the gaps are for all students, and making sure that we're looking at all things equity and all things special populations. For where we're setting our baseline, you can see the first column for graduation rate, extended graduation rate, and then the academic proficiency in reading, math, science, and then I'll talk about the others at the bottom in just a moment. So based on the TAC committee recommendations, you can see the 4-year graduation rate. We've left that flat at the 90.40%. We know that there are schools, based on the average of our concentrators, that will be above that rate. But again, we're being conservative so that we have more opportunity for successes, but supporting those schools that do need support. So the baseline would fall in this instance at the 5th percentile when we looked at the data modeling. The extended graduation rate, 91.59%. Language arts, the 52.78%. And then just, you can see just the slow, meaningful progress. At least we're showing this some progress across each of the years that the Perkins 5 plan, the original plan, will be in effect for fiscal year 2023. Math at the 46.45%, and science 53.26%. And when you see where it talks about post-program placement, we show that as a restricted value. We're trying to be very cautious to only provide data that's verifiable. And to tell placement, what that means is we're trying to show, we have to document where those students are 6 months after graduation. So typically it's by wage data and other means of getting that information. And right now, the only means we're able to get that at this point is through self-reported data. So often it may be a counselor or a parent that lets us know where those students are. So until we can have a better opportunity for verified data, we'll leave that as a restricted value for placement. And the same at the bottom where it talks about the recognized post-secondary credentialing. We're working on methods to have a more verified way other than self-reported. We do have a few vendors we're already getting commitments from to be able to report that information directly, and we'll probably be able to report those that will work with us on verified data. And then for the non-trad, what non-traditional means as far as the federal definition, non-traditional means like a non-traditional career field. So we look at career fields of where there is 25% or less of a specific gender represented within that field, and how we can help focus students from the other gender to be able to be interested and feel confident to go into that field. So for example, females in STEM, or a male in nursing, or a male in education, female in agriculture education. So it's a way through career and technical education that from the perspective of the workforce, if we need to build a pipeline of workers, we instantly can work on increasing that pipeline when we know that all students have the same opportunity no matter what that career is. So by gender, we're trying to take down stereotypes, try to break down barriers where you know, there's not a stigma in certain career fields for certain genders, and then that just makes it equal opportunity for all. So we've left the rate baseline 17.19% flat across. 17% seems low, but actually for Arkansas, our non-traditional rate is actually fairly high compared to most other states. You know, we can only do a hypothesis so far. We feel some of that is attributed to the large number of females that are becoming more interested in STEM because of the governor's computer science initiative, and also the amount of females that are interested in agriculture education in the state of Arkansas. So we hope to continue to improve these numbers, but we've kept it because, again, if we set it at a rate, then all schools are accountable for that, and we don't want to put as many schools in a situation where immediately we have so many that are non-compliant and we have improvement plans in place. One point that we'd like to kind of show here is that for our concentrators, when we're looking at math, science, and ELA, we're excited to share that CTE concentrators in science are actually performing a little bit above the state average academic performance. And so again, we can continue to look and try to see if we can figure out the why. The only thing we can hypothesize is that because CTE is a very hands-on and students are immersed in what they're doing and what they're learning, that this is what's helping the academic performance in science show in the modeling just a little bit above what the state average is for all students, and for non-concentrators, and for all students across the state. So we find this very exciting as we see some of the ways that CTE can have an impact for all students. So maybe a student's not connecting in a chemistry chemistry course, but maybe in their chemistry of foods course and family and consumer sciences, where they're doing it in a hands-on approach, working with food directly, that the learning increases because they're connecting those dots perhaps a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and move to questions, and we also have the Office of Innovation and Education on the phone with us for any rationale behind some of the baselines and modeling. We would love to hear any questions that you have on any of this information or anything else with Perkins 5 today.
Before we move into questions, can I remind everyone, whether you're on video or whether you're on the phone, please mute your microphones unless you're speaking, because we're getting background noise and it's very difficult for the participants to hear. So if you haven't already, please mute your microphones. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Kremers? Dr. Kremers, I was very excited about the data that you're sharing with us on the concentrators, how well they're performing, the graduation rates. I mean, just over and over, this is super news, and I think it would give districts an even greater desire to want to make sure that they get their kids in these programs and get them excited about them. So have you got plans to share, to maybe push this data out to districts and share with them how well that students are doing if they become a concentrator?
We will definitely work with the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education and see what type of a communication rollout that might be. But I think you know, at the district level, because we do have support for career and technical education throughout the state, but I think when it really connects the dots with the academic performance, I think that's where there could be gaps. And so that is definitely something that we'll work with the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education on how that might look on getting the word out. And you know, we worked carefully with the co-op directors at each of the co-ops. And so perhaps working with the co-op directors and through the CTE coordinators in districts, we can help do more presentations and get that word out. We have been connecting more often now with the teacher center coordinators throughout the co-ops as well. And I think that's an important component to make sure that the teacher center coordinators also understand and know more about CTE. So there's still a lot more to do, exactly what you're saying, to help share the good news. So that we can get more and more students involved. We do know right now from our enrollment count that the majority of students in Arkansas are not enrolled in CTE. So 54% of students are not enrolled in career and technical education. So we want to change that so that we have the majority that are enrolled in CTE, especially because we know it helps all students, especially special populations and those that are more at risk for dropping out because they just are more connected and engaged because they're doing.
What effect is the pushing back of the deadline going to have on implementation? You feel like that you're going to be ready to start implementing on July 1? How is that going to go?
We feel good for implementation starting July 1. We've been working on revamp of our programs of study well ahead of time. So our CTE coordinators and our teachers in the field have been prepared and ready to launch the new programs of study. All the course codes are ready. All of the certifications are ready to go. So as far as the implementation piece, we feel really confident about the rollout, and we're just excited that Octay is promising or projecting that there's no delay in implementation starting July 1. Another great advantage with the July 1 is the addition of charter schools who have been excluded from career and technical Perkins funding and inclusion. And with Perkins 5, the new law does allow support and funding through the charter schools. So we'll be able to extend our reach, and hopefully that also assists with more students' engagement with career and technical education. But implementation, we feel good.
Excellent, excellent. That's wonderful. Go ahead. Have someone have a question?
Can I ask a quick question? In relation to the charter school comment and the charter schools being added, one of the questions I hear from CTE directors is, how will this affect funding for the public schools? Because I'm assuming that will take away a little bit Do you have an estimate for the impact there to public schools?
Right now, we do estimate very low impact. Most of the conversations we've had so far is that the charters want to offer the programs, but they're not interested in all of the nuances and complexities that come with the Perkins component, and even the eligibility for the Perkins funding pieces of it. So far low. Now that may change through the years and we'll have a better handle, but if there is discussion, we will encourage them strongly to work with their CTE coordinators and become a part of a consortium, so that there's contribution fully through the whole consortium. But really, all of those to be discussed on how that would be handled. But right now, very limited impact from the funding piece of it, the allocation piece.
Yeah,
Thank
just a quick reminder that charter schools are public schools, so they yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question for?
I do. I have a question. Dr. Kramers, I know that this has already gone out for public comment before. You've worked with the teacher center coordinator directors, all the directors, and a lot of teachers through the plan. If you could just share what are teachers most excited about with this transition and this change, and then maybe what are the things that people are a little bit nervous about moving forward?
I'll start with the latter. So what are teachers most nervous about? So teachers are nervous. There was a lot of change with Perkins 5. And when we say a lot of change, programs of study had to align with the new federal requirements of increasing in specificity when you have a program of study. So in the past, students could take various elective courses and they could take them in any sequence at any time. With Perkins 5, that changed where they take a series of courses within that sequence so that we can model them for the concentrator data. That created a big change on electives that went away that were there and how things are sequenced, and the changes of some of our programs of study went away temporarily until they could revamp them to fit the Perkins 5 formatting. So there was a lot of comfort for teachers, and I've taught this for 20 years, and now it's either gone away or it's changed. So we just work very closely with the teachers who still have heartburn, or they just want a little bit more time, and getting them so that we have everybody confident and feel good moving forward. And we've had meetings where we've brought more teachers in with the CTE coordinators to talk about standards and frameworks, and how can we bring in different business and industry partners to get more engagement and involvement with the changes. And that's been very helpful as well, to get more people included within the changes happening. So that's really the primary thing as far as the concern is just the massive amount of change that actually happened. Because, you know, we have some programs of study that haven't been changed in decades upon decades. And with Perkins 5, it created changes, and it will continue to, because now with the new federal legislation, we have to review all programs of study every 2 years. So what used to be a very, it used to be a very stable, I guess you could say, for the teacher's perspective, a very stable environment. Now we have to be very fluid and responsive to business and industry, which ultimately we are preparing students for college and career. And even if they go to college, ultimately they're going to prepare for a career. And so we have to be fluid to that business and industry market. So that every 2-year flow of potential change is a little bit scary. It's a different world with Perkins 5 being most responsive to business and industry and impact. For what teachers are excited about, we've heard so many great things on how we'll be able to capture and integrate the good news about CTE. Just an example from today, being able to share about graduation rates so that teachers can have the confidence of the news of CTE being shared more, discussions with CTE being shared on the dashboard, so that when schools are talking about school success, that it also talks about CTE and school success, which directly complements the great work that teachers are doing in the schools. We've also heard excitement about all of the different new opportunities that it's creating. So there is more innovation and creativity that some teachers feel like those that are on the innovative lens feel like now is the time where we can submit new ideas for new programs of study, and that there is an openness to what they're seeing in their local community, and also that the funding is now driven based on local need. And so it's more from a school local driven model than from top down. And I think the teachers love that it's more of their community feel from what they're teaching and how the funding flows into their programs as well.
Okay, and real quick, how long will it be open for public comment? I know you said it's still right now open for public comment.
It is through April 14th.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And if you have any other comments for a section where public comment has closed, we're still happy to take that anytime. And so it can be entered as an email. Sarah Schamberger's on this call. We're happy to follow up with an email too, but really that public comment for the data, numerator, denominator, and all of that, you could even say, you know, I have sectioned it off and just say, I'd like to add a comment on a particular thing and parse that out. We're happy to look through. We read through every single thing that we get because we're so excited to hear. I have to say, we're not getting as much feedback on the data pieces. So we're happy to get, when we get them, we just go, yay, we got a comment, public comment.
Well, you're doing a great job, and we appreciate everything you've done to try to make this happen for our state.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeffcoat. I really appreciate that.
That's great. Does anyone else have a question? I just have one more quick question. It's not really about the Perkins plan. It's just, I know that there's been a lot of support from the department supporting teachers in core content areas during this time that we're not able to have in-building meetings. What are y'all doing to support teachers in your career areas?
Great question. Our staff have been working really hard, so we are actively involved with the AMI for Teachers resource through the Facebook app. And so we have a whole set of supports for each program area under that. And if you use the tag CTE, you can specifically see all of the CTE resources. We also added resources to our website under the DCTE website page, and it has AMI resource materials, and we add to that daily. And it has, again, for each program area, so whether it's STEM, ag, trade and industry, family and consumer sciences, you can go by each area and look at resources specific to each area. We also have a CTE staff person that's a part of the hotline for AMI. And so if there's any CTE questions that come through for CTE, we have a staff actively working with the hotline to assist with those questions as well. So while we know the majority of schools are doing CTE, we are also being supportive in areas where they cannot. We're being supportive with teachers supporting the core content areas in places where they have just not been able to do so. We've had challenges of live animals on campuses, you name it, but everybody's really come together to resolve those issues as they have come up.
Would you mind sharing your website and your hotline number?
Yes, and Chair Newton, I couldn't hear what you said. It was muted. I apologize. And
go ahead, Ms. McFetters, you had a question?
Yes, I wanted to know if she would share her website and hotline with us.
Okay, I'm going to ask for the hotline number from, if there's a staff member from DESE, we can follow up in just a few minutes on that. And in the meantime, I'm going to pull up the website. So the website is dcte.ade.arkansas.gov. And you can also get to it from the Department of Education and Division of Elementary and Secondary Education website that you're probably more used to going there for resources. They also link to our website, but this would get you here directly is the dcte.ade.arkansas.gov. And is there anyone that will share the hotline number for DESE? And if not, we can follow up in just a few minutes and share that through the chat also. Okay, it looks like I've got one pulling up here. Okay, the hotline for everyone. Thank you, Deb. Questions can be sent, called at 1-833-353-6050 to the AMI hotline. And there is any CTE questions, those are sent to our DCTE staff member. Thank you, Deb, for putting that number on there.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Kramers? Dr. Kramers, I just wanted to thank you for your hard work. I know it's been trying to get this done and then having to do AMI and all at one time. It's been very difficult, but I know you and your staff have worked very hard, and we're very appreciative of your work. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. I think our next item on our agenda is district support plans. Jane Green.
Good morning, Jane Green, Coordinator of District Support, Title I. In your agenda, you actually have some slides in regard to the status of the district support plans, and I am going to turn the presentation of these slides over to Dr. Jenny Stroud, who is the lead of our district support team. Our other two members are also available on this Zoom, Tracy Holland and Melissa Mattis. So after Dr. Stroud goes over the slides, if any of you have any questions, we're all on here that we would be available to answer those. Dr. Stroud?
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen and get started with just a few points. Maybe not.
Dr. Stroud, if it's the slides that you submitted, I think that they'll be able to click on the link within the agenda.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. This is just a quantitative look. This is the first time the districts are submitting, and all of the districts, the good news is all of the districts have submitted an approved plan. They're in compliance with the science of reading. And truly, when we say in compliance, they are learning what those pieces are. We've trained, we've shared that information face to face. We've had meetings that have been requested and even beyond our initial trainings. So they are truly trying to meet at the compliance level. With that said, what we've noticed is the strong components, the good news, the strong components is that the science of reading, which is the professional development that they should engage in, has started. Their professional learning community process, that's what they're using in order to build their curriculum so that they can then put the science of reading in place through their lesson plans. They're identifying essential standards, which is critical. They're reviewing their curriculum to see where that all fits. And when I say curriculum, the resources that they have. They're aligning the curriculum to their resources. They're tracking the data toward implementation. We shared with them ways to do that through Google Docs so that a district can know what each school is putting in place and how that connects so that they can support. They're monitoring the implementation. So once we get trained, it's then what do we do when we go back to school? So they're monitoring that in their plan. That's the component. And then there's leadership meetings reviewing the evaluation data toward meeting their goals. So the leadership is reviewing what the schools are doing for implementation and in order to support them to make sure that they get everything they need to implement. And that could even be purchasing resources, whatever that requires. Now, then on the side of needs for the school improvement plans for literacy, since they're in the beginning stages, getting all teachers trained is still a component. There's some that's truly just beginning. And then there are some that, are ahead of that game. But the needs then to improve the methods for monitoring, implementation, and providing feedback just means that we need to grow. So the principals are getting trained as the teachers are getting trained so that they can see what should the look-fors, what it should look like, and then to provide feedback for the teachers to improve. So it is a learning process, but the monitoring is one place to improve. And then, of course, monitoring then naturally leads to evaluation. So you need to improve the metrics for evaluation. And that's just reporting. Sometimes what we're seeing is a list of items to do, where in fact they need to be on the side of the look-fors of implementation. And an evaluation is not necessarily and always at the end of a process. So we've asked districts to consider then evaluating quarterly what they're putting in place to make sure the schools are being supported. So again, this is a learning process. So to help support that, what we're doing, currently writing webinars to address each of the component of the literacy district support plan. So that means that each webinar is short in length, just a few minutes. We'll provide all the links to the guiding documents in one place. So it'll be extremely convenient and they can refer back to it at any time. It can be staff meetings or their learning team meetings. We have face-to-face support at districts and co-ops that's continuing. We started face-to-face at the beginning, and we are also getting invited back for a second and third time sometimes. As the districts grow, they wish for the quality to grow as well, so we continue to get invited back. We're providing written feedback and phone support. That's through, the written feedback has been through Industar on the document that they are required to write their support plan on. Phone calls have been made, and if we don't hear from a district, then we're glad to pick up the phone and call them and ask if we can support them. But again, they've all turned it in now. So we're currently updating the new document for Industar just to make sure, as we've learned, what's been easiest for the district, and that is the idea, so we can make it convenient, because we want the quality of information, not to have to struggle with the document. We've explained numerous times using Google Docs, or we've had links in our documents to help support them just to link to the plan inside Industar, which saves someone a lot of time of just cutting and paste so they can get to the work. So we're updating that. We're planning for new and additional trainings as needed, as we see from this information coming in, as we've read all of the documents, which means we've read every district support plan and we check the school improvement plans as well. Then we see what is needed or what is lacking, and then we build information and guiding documents for that. We're going to be presenting also at the AD Summit this summer with this information and breaking that down even more. So that's just a quick synopsis, but it's certainly good information that's on our way. And I have to tell you this, the fun thing about this is there are districts that have sent in their plans that didn't even have to. And that's the level of people working around the state.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Stroud. Does someone have a question? Dr. Stroud, when this year, I know they're in the middle of working with their plans this year. When are the new plans going to be due and for the next cycle?
Mm-hmm. So I think we're continuing this same. You know what, Jane, you might need to help me answer that. Isn't that on the same timeline?
Last year, they, because of the lateness of us getting the identification out, we extended the deadline of when they had to upload those district support plans. I believe the date, we have so many dates. So I believe the date was November 1st. Was that correct, Jenny?
Right. And then we kept extending, as you said.
Yes, because this was the first time. This year, the intent is to have them upload much earlier, because they should have the procedure down on how they are to write those plans. So, you know, I can't even remember. Deb, do you remember what the deadline date is? It's September 1?
It's September, Jane. And then, like you said, we gave them soft dates because we started training in October and sharing information. And then as we got to every co-op or region, according to us arriving, we extended it even a little further. So it is September. You're right.
We didn't have time to get all the trainings in this year before that September date, and that's why we pushed that date where we had the opportunity to go to visit all the co-ops with our training.
Ms. Newton, as a continuous cycle of inquiry, we would hope that schools are always looking at their school improvement plans, that, as Dr. Stroud has said, that they're looking at how they're progressing, how they're evaluating their progress all throughout the year and making changes to their district support plan as needed. That's what continuous cycle of inquiry really looks like. We do have some dates in law, September 1 for those district support plans, but of course, under the COVID-19, we will be looking at all of those dates and sending guidance if any of them are going to be extended.
Right. Thank you.
I'm sure there's lots of questions that are going to come in the next few months that we'll deal with as we get there. And I'm sure the department is going to be very understanding of what schools are having to deal with right now. So I guess that way I'm understanding is if they've got a plan in place, they're just going to continue working with that same plan as time goes on and just continue on what they're doing and making modifications as needed.
Yes, ma'am. That's that continuous cycle. And we've asked them to map out their plan. You know, this is not a once and done. We were just having to put it on a document because it's required, but it's not a once and done. You're exactly right. Start the plan, continue a PD plan, and continue aligning the curriculum and implementing. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is the right time to answer this, but this is something that I've been thinking about, you know, during this time when we're not having face-to-face meetings as far as in a school building with students. Teachers may find, you know, different blocks of time that they didn't have before. And I was just wondering, had we thought about the PD that teachers have to do for the upcoming year, if, you know, usually they can't start that until June 1 for the next year. Have we thought about maybe giving them some leeway of being able to go ahead and start some of that, using some of this time? You know, I know they're busy working with students and still teaching, but, you know, it's a different kind. I didn't know if we had given some thoughts, you know, making some allowances that if teachers wanted to get on Arkansas Ideas and different things and start getting some hours toward next year's PD. Have we thought about that at all?
Ms. Newton, we are looking at everything, and we're, so I think there's no stone left that we're not turning over and addressing, but we've really prioritized the things that we're putting out right now. So if that's something that's already on our list to examine, and there'll be future guidance if needed.
Y'all always think ahead, so I know y'all are on the ball, so thank you for that.
You know, we love a plan.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have a question for Dr. Stroud? Okay, thank you. It was very informative. We appreciate it very much. And we appreciate your hard work on all these plans. I know reaching out to these districts is sometimes like herding cats, but we appreciate your hard work. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Our next presenter is Dr. Boyd with feedback from stakeholders regarding the report cards.
Hey,
Dr.
good
Boyd.
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you all and give you this quick snapshot of feedback we have so far from stakeholders. Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. So this feedback is mostly based on the school report card. So looking at our survey that we put out for the 2017-2018 school report card, I've outlined some noted strengths that we have and then some opportunities for improvement. For the most part, people thought that once you got through all the clicks to get to the school report card, that it was easy to navigate and that the information provided is valuable, and most people felt that they had a better understanding of local school performance after viewing the report card. Opportunities for improvement that were noted were, the too many clicks, the delay of the data coming out, and then people wanting to see trend data in one sheet. So in response to that feedback, we worked really hard, and when I say we, mostly Ms. Kaufman and Arisha and Denise worked really hard to reduce the number of clicks. So now, there's that link that goes straight to the report card where you can see all of the report cards in one sheet. You can change the year on that sheet. If you want to look at a school that no longer exists or a new school, you can choose the right year and look at that. We also got the school report card out 3 months earlier this year, and we're working to get it out even earlier next year. So we're trying to chunk the information as it becomes available to release the modules just as quickly as we have the data to populate the modules. And then we also reworked the module descriptions to try to make them a little bit more user-friendly. And we're continuously creating communication documents to help people understand what's in the school report card. We do have the new school report card came out, I believe, in February. It usually comes out in April. And I have about 30 responses on the survey for the current school report card. And I just really want to celebrate the fact that most of the open response items where people, type in their thoughts and ideas and questions are speaking about the improvement processes and what happens after people view the data. So I think that that's just really, really a good sign of where we are in Arkansas and working with our stakeholders and providing the data. They're getting used to seeing the data, and then now they're asking the questions, okay, now what? How can I help my school, my community school move forward now that I know and understand what their performance is like? Also, I'm working with a group of interns from the Clinton School of Public Service, and they're doing some feedback. They're gathering feedback through a survey they created, and then also they've done a couple of interviews. And here are the points that they've gathered. Most of their project is based on looking at family and community engagement and the tools that we provide on our website for, understanding your local community school. So some of the things that the feedback they've gotten is that stakeholders of all demographics are emphasizing the need for more school and community partnerships. Most of the time, stakeholders say they do not feel meaningfully engaged, that the engagement kind of feels one-sided, like the school is providing them information, but they don't feel like they're necessarily providing information back. And then the ones that are so there are a couple of education-based community organizations that are utilizing our online data tools quite frequently, And when they do utilize those, they're focusing on right now literacy rates and poverty rates and performance. And only about half of those with reliable internet choose to use our online tools at the moment. It's interesting to me because I didn't think this would be the case, but parents understand how students earn letter grades, but some don't realize that schools have letter grades, and they don't understand how those letter grades are earned. So that was interesting feedback. So just so you know, the Clinton School students were before, we were practicing social distancing. They went out into the field and approached people in person, at public events and public sites to ask them questions and get them to complete surveys, and then followed up with some people who are willing with interviews. So that's kind of where this data is coming from. So it's not like our survey where we just provide the link and people click on it if they want to. They actually went out and saw this feedback in person. And with that being said, they're gonna do, the clinical students are gonna do a complete presentation of their findings on April 14th at 10 a.m. And so if you wanna participate in that online presentation, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that you get the invite. Some of you, I think most of you on the panel have received the invite. So if you haven't seen it, you might wanna check your junk mail or something, because I tried to put all the people who sit on the task force and the boards and all those people in the queue to get that invite. So do you guys have any questions for me?
Dr. Boyd, I have a question. And do you happen to know how large the sample size was of their interviews? And also that point in which the school community partnerships, can you elaborate a little bit more on what those responses look like?
Yeah, so the sample, so they have like a couple of hundred people complete the surveys, and they've done, I think, between 10 and 20 interviews. So the interviews and the focus group that work was starting about the same time that we started practicing social distancing. And so they wanted to hold focus groups with, groups of like 5 to 10 people, but that wasn't possible. And so they've been conducting interviews, and I think they're going to have around 15 interviews completed by the time they complete their paper and provide this presentation. I think and I don't know this is purely an assumption, but I think in terms of the school and community partnerships, I really think that I think it might be a communication thing. So there might be school and community partnerships, but the larger community who's not involved in the partnerships doesn't realize that they're going on. But if you come to the presentation, if you have time to attend the presentation, then the clinical students can answer that for you with their factual information and not just what my assumption is from having conversations with them.
Thank you.
I have a question about the same thing, about the stakeholders. Has this group, and I know this is, we've been interrupted with the COVID virus, but has this group considered going out to some of the community partnership stakeholder meetings that are hosted at each of the co-ops or with some of the school districts to sort of gauge the perception of that group?
No, but that would probably be a great next step to do that. In this study, I really was urging the Clinton School students to go directly to the public and not go through the school district, just to see if we would get different information, because we traditionally do go through the school district, and that's how we get a lot of our information. So I asked them to go, directly to the stakeholder. But I do think that you bring up a good point, that talking to those groups would be helpful to kind of maybe triangulate that information. And I think that would be a great next step.
And just a follow-up to that, if the engagement feels one-sided, it might be helpful to know from the partner standpoint how that would look different I guess maybe what their vision would be so that they don't feel like it's one-sided. What their
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's something that'll be covered in the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I would like to comment on the community engagement piece. One of the things that our parent organization, National PTA, has been emphasizing is there's a difference in engagement and in transformative engagement. And not having the definition of those, it's hard to know which you're talking about. And for instance, transformative engagement is not necessarily getting information. And if transformative engagement is what the community is looking for, that may not be what the schools are trying to provide opportunities for.
Yes, I think I agree with you, and I think in-house we use the word meaningful engagement. I think it would probably closely align with your definition of transformative engagement.
Are there other questions? Dr. Boyd, I just had one quick question, and that the one-sidedness, I think it really struck me, and it bothers me a little bit that you know, because you know, it gets to the very heart of what we've been trying to do, to be student focused and to really make some meaningful changes, as you just said. So is there something that we could do with our report cards that can make it where it's not so much one-sided? Is there anything that maybe you've got in the works or something you thought about?
Yeah, so something that we're working on in my office that we recently tried, and I think is helpful, is, you know, well, you may not know, but we've hired a translator, and her name is Dr. Cassandra Wilson, and she is fluent in English and Spanish, and she's been doing these kind of education cafes where she's been meeting with community groups that already hold meetings. They are primarily to serve the Spanish-speaking community. And so we've just been trying that. She's been out to a couple of their events, and she'll either have a table or they'll give her time to speak. And from those engaging pieces, I think that that's going to work and help us to get to people feeling more meaningfully engaged, is when we insert ourselves into those smaller discussions and groups that are already taking place across the state. I think if we go out and seek those and build those relationships, I think that will help as to demonstrate meaningful engagement between the agency and the public. And if it works like I think it will, then I think it would be a good model for districts to replicate.
I know that communication has to be two-way for it to be effective, and I think sometimes districts are really good at pushing out information, but we're not really good at pulling it back in and listening. So I think any guidance that you could give and modeling, I think that would be a super thing to do. So thank you. Are there any other questions? I think Arjit had some comments he wanted to make.
Yes, yeah, thank you, ma'am. So apart from what Dr. Boyd added, one of the features is really that one-click feature that we've been focusing on, which means, you can download the entire report card with the one-click feature. Additionally, what we have done this year is schools are supposed to actually put a link of the report card on the school's website. So what we have done is every report card is a link in itself. So schools do not have to do anything on their own. Once they go to myschool.info.com.arkansas.gov/src and /put the year and the LEA number, the report card will automatically show up as a web page for them. So that's one thing is going to help districts immensely, because now they can directly link the page, because each and every school and a district have their own report card going forward.
That's super information to know. That might be something that I know y'all do these little webinars or small demonstrations on the web. That might be something that you might want to, if you haven't already, you may already have demonstrated that on the web for them.
Yeah, and that is one of the primary reasons we separated it out, kind of school report card from My School Info and gave its own, characterization and identification. Also, in terms of number of hits, and since we released school report card almost 90 days ahead, we've got close to 500,000 hits, which means, it's kind of reaching to 3 million hits right now for My School Info as a tool. So that's kind of a landmark that we are reaching as well as we cross 3 million hits. We have 2.9, approaching towards 3, and should be 3 million by early next week.
All right, that's fantastic news. Your team, Dr. Boyd and Arjit, y'all have worked so hard on these report cards, and it's evident, and the hard work that you've done, the improvements they've done. I didn't think it could get any better, but you did, and so we really appreciate your hard work.
Yeah, thank our friends at OIE. I think they have been phenomenal in getting us the data sets on time. That makes a lot of difference in the whole pipeline.
Yes, well, we appreciate it.
I just want to say I think our collaboration and partnership in this work has really increased over the last couple of years, and I think the public is greatly benefiting from that. And I, like Arita said, I'm very grateful for our partnership with his team and with Denise's team.
Ms. Zook, did you have a comment?
Everything is good.
All right.
I didn't mean to be off mute.
That's okay. I just want to make sure if you had a comment. All right. Anyone else have a comment or a question for this team that's done fantastic work in a short period of time?
Ms. Newton, this is Debbie, and I would just add that previously somebody had asked about Perkins 5, and this team is working with Dr. Kramer's team, and we'll be designing a report similar to the ESSA School Index report that goes all over the indicators for Perkins 5. So there will be a report for that. And with Perkins 5, there is a lot of data reporting that's required. And so we'll be building the appropriate modules for the report card to include that together. So it'll be a one-stop shop to go to for the data for the public. So all of those steps, I think, will keep adding to the ability for schools or the public to have that two-way communication about the data. And I think Arjit's walking you through how to get to that new link right there on the red taskbar to get to those report cards.
Yeah, someone asked for the link in the chat, and so I just went and grabbed it really quickly and put it in there. I think the main thing you guys need to know is that it's the regular My School Info link, but there's a \capital SRC at the end, and that's the link you want to use to go to the report card. Because you can go to the report card the old way by going through the school, but that way doesn't have as many of the nice features as this way does. So you want to make sure you're using that \SRC so that you can get the full use of the great features that Regent and his team have built in.
Yeah, and you can sort by LEA name, and by letter grade as well, so that's another cool feature. I think the letter grade has been appreciated by a lot who wants to look at how their schools are doing.
Arjit, maybe I didn't understand you. Is there a way that schools can put this on their own web page where their own LEA would come up and not any others?
So when you click on any particular link, you'll see, the link kind of changes to the year, which is the 29, and then / the LEA number, which generates a unique URL for their own school. So yes, they would be able to click that. I think.
So once if they clicked a particular year and then pulled up, then once that LEA number came up, then they could just save that web to their own website.
That's correct. You can see on the web page on the URL, that's the report card for Memorial Charter Elementary, and the link is unique, barely a number changes and the year changes. So.
Okay.
And
So,
it's a single one page, so you can just scroll down, you can click on any of the modules on the left. It's one page, scrolling down.
right. Okay. I think Kathy, you had a question on that. Does that answer your question? How, someone else, Ms. Tidwell, you had a question?
This is Kathy. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Did anyone else have a question?
Yes, ma'am. This is Chassie Tidwell. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question. Now, this may not be something that someone can answer. I hope so. I'm a guidance counselor at Monmouth High School, and I was just wondering, since we were talking about the school report card regarding community service, I was just wondering, what way is the state able to pull that report? Like, say, for example, our kids, they get the total hours, 75 hours, and, we report it and give them the credit on their is the state pulling that data to show or to add or for the school? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so in order to get credit for that, you have to make sure that you mark the kid as it's a pass fail. And I'm not sure, Regent, maybe you can help me. I'm not sure if it's Triand or eSchool, but it has to have the correct course code, and then they have to have the pass fail put in. And if you have the correct course code with the pass pulled in, when we pull the data from the data warehouse, then they'll show up as getting a point for that community service. So the main thing with those, usually where people fall off, is making sure that the course code is the correct course code.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And so we can point for each student that, if that course code is correct, it's in the Triand or eSchool. You get a point for each student?
In their 12th grade year.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's all I want
to know. So if
Thank
they got
you.
it in, yeah, you're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Boyd or Arjit?
And I just want to emphasize those course codes are in the business rules. So the business rules for how we'll calculate as a school index that comes out in October is already out on the informational documents page of our ESSA webpage. So those are where you can go ahead and check those course codes and make sure you have students enrolled in the right course codes before we close out cycle 7.
Okay. Dr. Rowell, why don't you add your comments so everyone can get your
I was just chatting there's one course code. There is a very detailed commissioner's memo that came out. It's probably in the 2018-19 commissioner's memos, and it details all the instructions around the service learning credit requirement and then the course code that's being used for that. So I would encourage you to go into and search for the commissioner's memo around this course credit.
All right. Dr. Boyd, Arjit, again, I want to thank you and your team. I know it's not just a one-person effort, it was a whole team effort, but y'all have done excellent work, and we are all very appreciative of what you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other last-minute questions? All right, we're going to move on then. With all that's going on, this would be the middle of testing season right now, and we're not doing that. And so there have been some waivers asked for, and Ms. Kaufman is going to catch up on what's going on with that.
Thank you. If you go to the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education webpage and you click on the ESSA box, you'll see that we are posting, as soon as we have information, we are posting it there on our ESSA page, and we'll continue to do that. Just to kind of catch everyone up with our notes, which I have pages of notes. Let me get to those. On March 23rd, we submitted a waiver request to the U.S. Department of Education requesting waivers from the state assessment for this spring for the effects of that then on accountability, there would be no ESSA school index for 2020. And then for some specific items that are required in reporting on the school report card, we received immediate response practically from the U.S. Department of Ed. We got an email coming back saying that we had tentatively been approved. But on March 27th, we received our official approval letter. And both of those letters are posted on our ESSA page. As a part of those waivers, we are required to seek public comment. We are asking you to read our letters, to kind of keep up and stay up with us. We'll continue to put information out as soon as we get it. But if you have any comments for us, if you would send those to ade.essa comments, ESSA comments at arkansas.gov. That's also posted there on our ESSA webpage. We would appreciate that. We expect there to be more waiver opportunity. They're asking school districts to go back and really study their individual plans because every state plan is so different. They're asking us to study those plans, our plans carefully, and let the U.S. Department of Education know if there's something that we need. We are doing that right now. Dr. Boyd's team has been going through all of the guidance and looking at it very carefully. Denise's team at OIE is doing the same. The learning services team, assessment team, doing the same. And Rachel's on the phone if we need her to step in and talk about that. But we're looking at it with a really fine tooth comb, because we need to think not just about what's going to happen this spring, this summer, this fall, but what are the long-term effects. And we are compiling data. Denise has been modeling some data. What if this, what if that, those kinds of things. And we'll be taking that information to our technical advisory committee to give us good guidance. Our number one priority is to make sure that all of the stakeholders in our state are confident in our state and federal accountability system. And so we've tried to think through every potential problem long before it becomes a problem, so that we can mitigate it and not ever let it be a problem. So we just encourage you to stay tuned with us. We will put everything out as soon as we have some final answers. Questions for me?
You have questions for Ms. Coughlin?
I have a question. And I know this is something that's probably already been discussed or will be discussed. I know you mentioned that there's the opportunity for waivers in the future, and the waivers that we're requesting are for this school year. And with the understanding that we're closed now and the continuity of learning has changed, even if we were able to assess students next year, it would appear that those students would be behind because we've missed out on all of this opportunity for learning. So I don't know how we account for that, or if there's a plan to account for that. I know that may help us the following year when it comes to growth, showing student growth. But just your comments or your thoughts on not only this school year, but how what we're going through today will impact next school year.
So that is one of our big topics that we have on the agenda for our TAC meeting. We've asked our TAC to start meeting with us a little closer to each other, because we do have these questions coming up that we need to model data on. We've been modeling data, and Denise can speak to that. I prefer to us really speak to it after our TAC has examined the data. But right now, we're testing, we're not seeing a huge impact, but the specifics of it are things that we need our TAC to help us think through. So a long answer to say, Dr. Jeffcoat, that is one of our top questions, not just about what is the short-term impact for this school year, but what's the long-term impact on our accountability system. So
Well,
thank
I
you.
know we have some time before we have to submit any type of waiver or any request to take all that into consideration. And it's fair to say that if it's affecting us, it's affecting everyone in our nation. So I appreciate the conversations that are being had and the considerations of the impact, not only for this year, but for next as well.
Dr. Jeffcoat, this is Denise. I just have to commend Ms. Kaufman, because from the moment that there was a whisper of school closure, we have been working through all these different contingencies, and at her request, and she's really initiated some very important conversations with the national groups that do this sort of thing they give this kind of advice for a living. And so a lot of those are on our tack, and I'm like you, I'm anxious to hear where they land on this. But Ms. Kaufman has been so far ahead of the game in reaching out. I don't know of anybody who's going to have a TAC meeting as quickly as we are to get to discuss these issues, so that we can really be informed as some of these decisions are made, because there is so much concern out there about not just, are we having a loss in learning, but are there bigger variations in how much learning is going on? So I just really appreciate the initiative she took to really start addressing this before we realized how long this may impact our work. So we're literally looking out 3 to 4 years at what are the impacts and what can we expect to do and what might we need to do.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that very much. And Ms. Kaufman, I know that you're going to find the solution to this. We're just going to be patient, and we appreciate your leadership very much.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a team effort here. But I do appreciate that at any time, if anyone just says, hey, I'm just wondering if you've thought about this, please feel free to email me, email Denise, email Dr. Boyd, any of us. I'll put our email addresses up there. Even if you think, oh, I bet this is redundant, just go ahead and email us and we'll say, got it on the list or something like that. But it just helps us to think through this from so many angles and perspectives. So you just cannot ask us too many times to make sure that we have something on our list.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else have a question? Ms. Kaufman, I was wondering, I know we've gotten a waiver on the federal accountability. What about state law? How are we going to address what's in state law as far as assessment?
Well, we are so fortunate. We have a great commissioner and a great deputy commissioner that's going to help us work through all of those. But we are working on our list of things that will need to be addressed as soon as possible. Certainly our governor is quite busy with the health issues, and so as soon as they can catch a breath, we'll start to work on these, but we've got a little time to get all that done.
I didn't know if it was something that would have to be addressed legislatively or it could be just through the commissioner's office. I didn't know how that would work.
So our first step is to make our comprehensive list, and then we'll go back through each one to see if some of them need to be handled, if they can be handled, as you say, the commissioner's office, the governor's office, or if we need legislators to look at them. But we'll make a comprehensive list first.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Y'all have done an excellent job and under a lot of stress, and I know y'all have worked probably lots of nights, and so it's very much appreciated what you've done for the students and teachers of Arkansas. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? Okay. Ms. Kaufman, what plans do you have for our next meeting?
Actually, normally I come back and say, oh, I think we need to meet at a certain time. Actually, I'd like to say that I think we need to be tentative with that. So we won't let a long time go by, but based on all these things that we've kind of addressed today. We're going to have waivers coming out that we may need to come back and talk about. We may need to do things at the state level for accountability. There may be questions that come up down the road with assessment. So Perkins, we've got a lot of things going on here with these timelines. And so what I'd like to do is say we need to be tentative.
Okay.
And pick a date that's going to, as soon as we have more data coming into us and we have things for you to look at and give us feedback, that we can call a meeting and hopefully call another Zoom meeting like this to where people can jump on quickly and help us think through issues.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. So we'll just plan for whenever you need us. We'll get back together. And again, we're very appreciative of your work and all the work of the department. And thank everyone that took the time to join us today and your comments. I'm sure that Ms. Kaufman and her team were taking lots of notes and writing down ideas. So thank y'all for your comments and your questions. And Ms. Kaufman, are you going to share emails with the group in case they have comments afterwards that they want to add?
Yes, I've already, I think I posted those privately. Let me post those out to everyone. And if you don't mind, Ms. Newton, Rachel Hogue is on as well.
Okay.
And she is our Director of Assessment. So Rachel, is there anything else that you want to add that I didn't speak to?
No, Ms. Kaufman, I think you did a great job talking about a lot of the considerations, and I appreciate your attention to the fact that there's a lot that we don't know that we're putting before the TAC. I think also I appreciate the way the governor has said that Arkansas is not isolated here. This is not an Arkansas issue. So I think as other states continue to work through these things as well, I think that we are in good company for looking out for the best the good of our students and using our data appropriately. So I appreciate the way you've presented it here.
Ms. Kaufman, Ms. Newton, could I just say one thing just to follow up on what Rachel just said? In our conversations supporting some of our schools, we're hearing a lot of just concerns about that they're trying to meet, and those concerns are around food insecurity, which is growing in leaps and bounds. Also around varying internet access. Some solutions that some of the schools have gone into have had to be pulled back because they've created problems with people gathering. and then social emotional learning has been another piece. And so I guess part of what I'm saying is when it comes to accountability and assessment, those are things that we are certainly really doing due diligence on. What we can't do that everybody else out there in their school and community can do is you can directly impact by sharing that there's a thoughtful process going on, and some of your uncertainties are being addressed in a process that will play out over time. But in the immediacy, those three big areas are huge. And if you can help your neighbors and the folks that you interact with to really focus on that, because you can have such a direct impact, I think that will also really serve our students well, in addition to the work that the division is doing to keep all these things in mind.
Very good. And I think that we're in right now really brings to mind that we need to keep our priorities straight, don't we? Really think about what's going on and you know, just make it a matter of prayer and just support one another, because I think we've said it over and over. We're in this together, aren't we? Yeah.
Can I say one
Sure.
thing? This is Trisha.
Sure.
In addition to the things that Denise mentioned, another item to consider where we have English learners is language access issues for the parents. You know, our biggest message to districts has been communicate, communicate, communicate with the families. Keep in mind, if they don't understand English, and if we're sending a whole bunch of English packets home and English directions, they may not be able to access what we're sending. So use, you know, different parent communication systems like Remind, Talking Points. Many of them have a translate feature you can use. as well as Google Translate, while it's a machine translation, is better than sending something in English to a family that can't read it. So I am glad that Jesse has had the foresight, and we are providing the PBS packets if that's what a district chooses to use in Spanish. But there are 100 and something languages in Arkansas. Many of them are supported on Google Translate. Like I said, they might want to make sure parents know we did this with a machine translation, but here is some help so you can understand the information we're sending home to you as parents. Otherwise, it'd be like you or I receiving maybe something in Japanese, unless some of you know Japanese. So I just encourage districts to keep that in mind as we're moving forward.
Tricia, we've heard that too. One of the big needs right now is Marshallese as well, and I don't know if Google translates.
It's a difficult language for us to get translated, partly because it's a newer written language, and it's just hard to locate translations for that. So there are some companies that will do that, but it does cost, and some bigger districts with Marshallese populations have the staff to do so, but they only have limited staff to translate things for every building. So as much of a district response as we can do, that's good, but it is a challenge.
This season has definitely brought some equity issues to the front. I think we can learn some lessons from, and maybe do some things different in the future after this is over. Maybe we can work on that a little bit more too. Any other comments before we wrap this up?
Ms. Newton?
Yes.
I think one of the things that is encouraging, that speaks to a couple of the points that Dr. Ola made, was a lot of the churches all over the state are sharing 10 to 40% of their donations to help with the food insecurity. And I think all the work that the stakeholders group has done prior to this, not having any idea that those people were the very ones. And I know a lot of churches also have Wi-Fi, and they're allowing people to come in their parking lots and let the students access the lessons there. So I think we owe a special thanks to all of our team who do this every day, but also to a lot of the stakeholders. And I appreciate the leadership of the department and Sharice and Dr. Hill on this area.
We've seen people from all over the states and filling out where it's been needed, so it's very, very much appreciated. Any other comments before we leave today?
I have a question in reference to the Science of Reading series that was on Arkansas Ideas. Will those be continued? Our teachers were very excited about those.
Ms. Kaufman, is there someone from Learning Services on?
I was just checking the list. I'm not seeing anyone. Rachel, do you know?
So I've not been a part of those conversations. I would expect for those to continue, but I'd hate to say definitely yes without having some sort of confirmation, but I'll be happy to follow up on that. And Ms. Kaufman, once I find that answer, where would be the best place for me to put it?
Could we get whomever asked the question to put your email in the text?
Ms. Flowers?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Ms. Kaufman, maybe could you push it out to the whole group whenever you find that out?
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we leave? All right. Again, thank you for joining, and thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, who was that? Okay, I need okay, Miss Sanders, and then who's the other one?
Joyce Flowers.
Miss Flowers. Okay, thank y'all. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion is the accepted, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.